The gala hall was a living thing. Chandeliers spilled light like rain. I stood where Daniel's mother wanted me to stand. Daniel had pushed me forward with a proud smile that felt like a shove. He wanted me to accept a token award. The microphone felt cold in my hand. I felt the crowd watching every breath. I tried to speak about small things, about a dream that had lived in me for years. Victoria sat in the front row. Her smirk found my face. Mid-sentence she laughed loud enough to cut the music. Daniel leaned over and copied my voice. By the company? Right, Nora? The room fell into a strange silence and then applause for his joke. My cheeks heated like oven walls. My hands trembled when I stepped down. The elevator felt small and thin like a box. Daniel laughed about ambitious delusions, as if it were a story to tell. The words were knives. I felt a tight chill in my chest that I could not breathe around. I pulled my thumb across my phone. My thumb pressed hard and I whispered to myself, "Not tonight." My finger hit send. 3 words left the screen. It was a small act and a loud one. It's happening now. The limo ride home was quiet like a lake before rain. Victoria's text had arrived already. It was full of thin kindness and a sharp edge. My chest felt tight. The words from the gala replayed like a record stuck in the same place. Daniel drank more wine and shrugged as if it was a game. He thought it clever, a story to tell. I should have felt only hurt. Instead, a focus settled into me like a tool. I opened my banking app while he laughed. There was an account most people did not know about. I kept it private because I wanted control. The balance sat there, heavy and honest. It had been waiting for a real need. The account name was Meridian Cove. The line said Pembroke. The number made my breath catch. I did not want revenge. I wanted life. The money was like a ladder to climb out of being dismissed. My phone buzzed then. An encrypted message from a lawyer I hadn't heard from in months blinked on the screen. The message was short and sharp. It said simply, "Ready to execute." I felt the world tilt. 3 years back I had a different life. I built a small business with hands that knew how to plan and stay steady. I sold it quietly. I promised myself then that nobody would ever tell me what I could not do. I funneled the pennies and small wins into a private holding. I named it Meridian Cove because the name sounded like a safe harbor. Only Ava and my mother knew the plan. They were the only two who kept secrets like I do. I did not tell Daniel. He would have called it a pipe dream. My plan moved slow like a winter river. I bought tiny, anonymous stakes in companies I watched like birds. Pembroke was a family textile company. They thought of themselves as too big to notice. I opened a spreadsheet and felt a strange warmth. On a row, my name sat next to a line that read 9.8%. I did a small, shocked laugh that no one could hear. Ava called that moment. Her voice was steady. "You have one more by window, 10 minutes, she whispered like wind on glass. We were still at the house when the first moves began. Daniel kept telling the story to his friends as if he had thrown a net and caught a fish. I breathed slow and kept my face calm. Inside, stakes moved like chess pieces. I told the lawyer to release the funds. The buys went out through 5 anonymous trusts. I liked legal shapes. They covered things and made them work without noise. There was a cooling period in the contracts, a timer that other people read as safety. But each trust had an emergency clause, something rare and powerful. It could activate if a single controlling share consolidated. Lawyers whispered the phrase like a secret. The final trust needed only one signature. Mine. I held the pen like a compass. The ink was quiet and final when I signed. I texted Daniel a selfie from the gala. He smiled in the picture and the caption below said, "You just gave a speech for a dead man's company." His laugh stuck in my throat like a stone. Victoria posted an Instagram story that night. She wrote about humble, practical women, and tagged me as the example not to follow. Her followers liked and wrote short sentences that bit. Daniel sent a laughing gif to one of his groups and the world inside our house went small. Public mockery wounded in a different way than private. The room filled with sharp air. I did not answer the messages. People I did not know began saying small things about me on feeds. Then a small miracle happened. One of Victoria's longtime investors left a subtweet that read, "Curious who's buying under the radar?" That tiny question was a light. It pulled a journalist toward my door. A veteran reporter slid into my DMs as if that was how grown things begin now, by a message. Any comment about anonymous share transfers at Pembroke? She asked. I could feel the hunger on the line. I typed one sentence and then deleted it. Finally, I sent one short line. No comment for now. The reply sighed into my phone like an agreement to a dangerous plan. Daniel invited friends over and showed off like he had power to spare. He told the same story about me as if he were telling a joke he owned. I kept my head down and helped with glasses. I watched him laugh and felt a chill churn into me. Later, alone with him, he asked a soft question that sounded like curiosity and a shield at once. Why do you care about the company? He asked as if the world had only one answer. I told him the truth. It was about respect. It was about proving I could build, save, and fix things with my hands and my mind. He listened, but not to me. In his silence, a small slip happened. He confessed that he had once voted with Victoria to block a worker benefit proposal. My stomach dropped like a stone. The house felt different. That night I found an unsigned shareholder letter open on his laptop. The words named me as a potential obstacle to the family's plans. My fingers went cold and the room felt like glass. He had no idea I had seen it. I had no idea if he could ever understand why I could not let this lie. Ava arrived at dawn with 2 coffees and a folder the size of a small secret. She smelled like coffee and very sharp decisions. Her eyes were calm and had that quiet storm I trusted. She sat opposite me and did not smile. I bought the last open block of Pembroke shares, she said like she'd told me the weather. She had bought them the week before on my instruction. My heart sped like a bird. She laid out a fax she had faxed the night before. The papers were old-fashioned and perfect. An irrevocable proxy would transfer voting rights to Meridian Cove the moment the final escrow cleared. Her voice did not shake. She told me the plan in small pieces so each one could fit in my hands. I watched the sun lift into the room while she worked my name into the documents like a spell. My mind started to move fast with 1,000 small plans. Then her phone lit up. Board emergency, meeting in 45, the screen read. Her thumb hovered over the answer and then she put the phone down. We both sat very still. The board called an emergency meeting and the house of cards started to wobble. I watched the live feed from a bedroom with the sound low like a sleeping thing. Victoria's voice sounded thin for the first time. Lawyers use big words about shadow purchasers and market manipulation. The air felt thick with old money and new fear. Daniel paced behind me like someone searching for a fact he could not find. He said, "This is getting out of hand." I watched their faces on the screen as they tried to make sense of a ghost buying the pieces under their feet. A board member suggested something like burning a house to save it, put the company up for sale to stop a hostile takeover. The thought landed inside me like wind. If they sold, anyone could buy. If I had the money quick, I could buy it clean. The thought lit me like a lamp. But the clock was a hard circle. The window for a real move felt thin as paper. I felt the world tighten to a single bright point. Called old friends and older favors. My phone list had people I had helped before, and they had not forgotten. The pilot angel backers I once trusted heard me out and made small sounds. A philanthropic trust listened to the plan about saving jobs and the idea of worker benefits. Ava's fund moved with machine calm. Most were skeptical at first. They wanted the math and the heart. I gave them both. Numbers fall into place when truths feel right. I showed them a plan with figures and safety nets and a moral force that could shift a town's habit. Then a surprising voice said yes. It was a rival textile conglomerate's ex-CEO who owed me a favor. His money could carry 60% of the purchase. His terms were sharp and honest. He would want a press release. He wanted the world to watch the purchase. I felt the heat of the choice. The rival would front the cash only if I allowed a public reveal now. The cliff hung. The choice would break things open. We pushed the press. I staged a leak. An anonymous tip to every feed about management abuse at Pembroke. The story ran like a small wildfire. Feeds filled with angry comments and small outraged emojis. Victoria called a press conference, her mouth making a smile that did not touch her eyes. Daniel sat on a stool and looked smaller than the room. Reporters asked questions that were sharp like knives. The leak included an affidavit from a longtime employee, who spoke about layoffs and choices that favored bonuses over pensions. The affidavit wore truth like armor. The board looked weak when the story spread. The town felt the hum of gossip shift into something heavier. I watched teams of people talk about my name and the ghost purchases. In the middle of the storm, Victoria tried to lead, but her voice faltered. And then the employee's identity came out in the morning print. It was someone close to Victoria, her own secretary. The room tilted with the revelation. The secretary's statement changed the shape of the day. She gave an on-the-record description of hidden accounts and patterns of layoffs that cut benefits while directors took bonuses. The words landed in reporters' laps like stones. Regulators began to pay attention. I watched as the story moved from gossip to government. Daniel called my phone with a voice I had never heard, small and plain. "Nora, please, this is spiraling," he said. I felt the old anger, the shame, and then something colder, intent. I did not answer. A legal notice appeared at our front door that afternoon like a knock. Pembroke's law firm wanted to silence the story. I opened the envelope and the paper felt heavy with threat. Their cease and desist claimed I had done wrong. I read the letters carefully. In the type was a traitorous oversight. They had used the wrong corporate address. The technical error made their threat weak like thin ice. The injunction would fail on a small motion. I kept the paper in my pocket and did not celebrate. I had learned that legal war is slow and bitter. But for now, Victoria had lost small ground. The cease and desist arrived and I held it steady like a stone. The lawyers had not written well enough and a technicality made their threat wobble. Victoria flared online and in private. She looked frantic across the feeds. The public watched finances and speeches. I felt the small relief of a successful motion but knew it was only the start. Daniel confessed something that night that made me inhale like someone underwater. He had signed a non-compete years ago. The words meant his actions could complicate what I planned. The worry settled in my bones like cold. Ava texted at midnight. "One more thing," her message read. My heart rate jumped. She said there was going to be a shareholder meeting tomorrow. The board planned a preemptive sale to stop the takeover attempts. If they sold the whole company now, my path would change. I had to think fast. The world narrowed again to the small rectangle of my phone. The shareholder meeting began like a ritual of old money. I streamed it with my coffee cooling in my hand. Victoria moved the agenda like a conductor. Her words were meant to calm the room, but the air felt brittle. Shareholders whispered like people passing notes. My proxies looked firm but not enough. I clicked through numbers and felt the edges of plans. Then the chat froze. A surprise attendee spoke up online. It was the disgruntled cousin who had sold his shares to Ava. He announced live that he was revoking his proxy. The virtual room held its breath. My screen refreshed with a new line item. Emergency buyout offer. A small loud drum in my chest started to speed. I smelled coffee and the sharp paper of votes. They gave moment after moment as if time slowed to let a choice find itself. I saw faces of old shareholders tighten. The board looked alarmed. The sale would move fast now. I felt a strange calm like a blade polished and ready. I put forward a bold buyout offer with Meridian Cove. The number was full price and fair. With a clear plan to reinvest in the workers and communities Pembroke had shelved. The offer read like a promise and a challenge. Shareholders had to choose between cash now and a plan for the future. The room hummed with the sound of thinking people. Victoria's face went white where cameras found it. The rival investor from the other conglomerate stepped forward to back me officially. He wanted publicity and he wanted results. He had one condition. Daniel could not hold any future management role in the company. The line felt sharp and honest. My heart pounded with the cost. Keep my marriage or change my life. The choice landed like a heavy stone. I thought of the Gala and Victoria's laugh. I thought of the workers and the life I wanted to make. My pen hovered over the agreement. I had 30 minutes to decide. We sat in our bedroom like two people on different maps. Daniel's face was a storm of pride and pain. He begged me to stop, to think of family and the future they would lose. His voice shook like a small leaf. He wanted us to protect what had always been his. I looked at him and felt 1,000 tiny memories. I remembered the night I first told him my dream and how he had laughed. I remembered his smirk under the gala lights when he had made me into a joke. His confession hit like an open wound. He admitted he had once sabotaged a small purchase I tried to make years ago to protect the family name. Betrayal is a slow burn and I felt it now. My hands trembled but my mind was clear. I could not be owned. I told him I would not be told what to do with my life. The contract sat on the table. I signed. The buyout went live in 30 minutes. He looked at me like a person betrayed and a person left behind. The buyout news hit like a rolling drum. Social feeds lit up. Hashtags rose and then burst with heat. Opinion pieces called me a social climber and a white knight in the same breath. Late-night shows made jokes and asked hard questions. The town split into small camps. Some called me a hero for the workers. Others said I had used money to buy status. Victoria used every interview she could to paint me as opportunistic and shallow. The tide was messy and loud. Then a whistleblower posted payroll emails that showed Victoria had diverted safety budgets to bonuses. The document was small and savage. The angle swung. People who had been unsure started to tip like a line of dominoes. Daniel found a voicemail on his phone from his mother that screamed blame and fear. He left the house with his phone ablaze and did not come back right away. The world felt both loud and very small. I closed my eyes and felt a single thought. This was not only about me. It was about the people who worked long nights in rooms that smelled like cotton and oil. Victoria hit back fast and sharp. She filed an emergency petition claiming improprieties in my share acquisition and tried to freeze the sale. The court calendar moved like a horse racing a clock. I sat in a courtroom lobby where the air smelled like paper and sweat. Ava leaned close and whispered strategy with a voice cut from steel. We had to show transparent funds, a clear chain, and a moral argument. The judge asked questions that landed like cold drops. Proof of funds and proof of intent. We had 30 minutes. My lawyers and Ava moved with quiet fury. Paper flew and signatures found their places. My email pinged at the exact moment the judge's hand moved over a pad. A wire confirmation showed the final trust transfer had cleared. The court's eyes widened slightly as numbers landed. The world seemed to tilt on a single line of numbers. I clutched my coffee and felt my body shake like a leaf in wind. The judge's call could be mercy or a long fight. The wire confirmation felt like the slow opening of a heavy door. The escrow completed and Meridian Cove's voting rights transferred in a single moment. The live board stream caught the moment and their faces changed with it. 10 minutes after Victoria mocked me at the gala, a corporate announcement listed me as the controlling stakeholder. The room felt unreal like a film. I had bought the company clean with a clause that froze Victoria's executive powers until a full audit. The twist alone made me feel almost dizzy. The chat in the live stream exploded like a bucket of sound. Daniel barged into the boardroom stream at that exact second, desperate and loud and angry. He demanded to speak. Screens showed his face red and raw. The board paused as if the world had tilted. I sat very still and thought about the way laughter had used to cut me. Power moved into my hands like a bright, cold thing. Daniel stormed the live stream like a man who wanted to stop a train with his bare hands. He begged me to put family first and to avoid tearing everything open. He called me irrational in a voice that broke. The chat exploded with people taking sides. Some defended him and others did not. I rose slowly and read a statement I had written in small, clear sentences. The company would keep its name. Workers would get protections and funding. No board member would be immune from oversight. The words felt steady as I spoke them. Daniel used one last tactic and called for a private deal to avoid public exposure. His face was red as a fruit and his hands shook. I said no. In that moment he screamed a line that broke something small inside me. He blamed me for things I did not do and revealed a small web of cover-ups he had helped maintain. The confession hung in the air like smoke and people watched it burn. After the live stream meltdown, the fallout rushed over us like waves. Several board members resigned in public statements that hinted at quiet disgust. Victoria's publicist dropped her like a hot coal. Daniel's friends sent texts saying they never saw that side of him. My mother cried on the phone and told me I had done the right thing. It felt strange to be praised in the same breath as hated by others. Victoria made a scorched message about me that read so viciously the public turned further. People began boycotting Pembroke-branded goods. The company's stock dipped in small sharp lines. A competitor filed an emergency inquiry suggesting the whole situation might hide collusion. The town felt like a living, breathing thing holding its breath. I walked the streets and felt eyes on me. I had wanted to fix things, not to see the family fall. The cost of truth rose like a tax and I felt it in my bones. The first day I walked into the company as the chair. The factory smelled like grease, coffee, and tired hands. Workers watched me with faces folded in questions. I felt like a stranger in a house I had just bought. I did not want to be a conqueror. I wanted to be a builder. A longtime manager came to my office and handed me a folder of safety reports Victoria had buried. The pages smelled like old dust and truth. They proved the problems I wanted to fix. Tears rose in my chest because I saw how things had been left to rot. At dusk, a group of workers gathered outside my office with an old photograph pinned to their jackets. It showed children who had grown without the benefits they were promised. They looked at me like a test. I told them our first moves would be to restore pensions and safety. The workers' faces were cautious but hopeful. I felt responsibility like a weight and like a promise. Victoria fought back not just with money but with reputation. She painted me as a city girl who knew nothing about textiles, and she tried to rally old friends. She funded legal counters and sought injunctions like a shield. But desperation leaked from her words like water from a cracked pipe. A former board ally publicly defected to my side and cited Victoria's secrecy as the reason. He spoke with a quiet anger that made the papers stand up straighter. One night a package arrived at my desk with a flash drive taped inside. It was labeled in a hand that trembled. What happened to the pensions? I felt my fingers go cold and then hot. The drive might be evidence or trap. Ava and I planned a careful press briefing. We would show facts and not fury. I slept like a person who knows how to stand and fight. At the press briefing, I dropped the files from the flash drive on the table like pieces of a map. Internal memos showed diverted pension contributions, and email threads revealed priorities that favored bonuses over safety. A ledger showed shell companies that moved funds like shadows. The room was quiet until reporters began to speak in a new tone, one of shock and then anger. The public reaction rose like tide water. The lead investigator for the pension claim stood up and said he planned to file criminal referrals. The idea of jail hung in the air like cold rain. That night Victoria boarded a private jet. She was leaving town in haste. I felt a small wash of relief and sorrow. The truth had forced her hand, but the work was not done. The town needed steady hands and honest plans. The workers needed real budgets and not press statements. Daniel came back to the house with an empty look and a small bag. He begged me to help Victoria avoid prison. He said he never wanted this. He wanted family peace. I listened with my body still and my face soft. He apologized without turning to me, as if the apology was a page he could not read aloud. I read him the ledger of things he had done. Votes, silences, and small betrayals that helped build a wall around the truth. He asked for a divorce after a long shaky breath and said he could no longer live with the version of me that would not bend. The words fell like glass. I signed the papers but placed a clause that he must testify truthfully in the investigations. It was not cruelty. It was the only way to make a life with truth instead of secrets. He left slowly, carrying the weight of his choices. I felt a sorrow like wind through a loose window and a sense of finalness that cut like a clean blade. Months later, the company hummed like a living thing being healed. Worker benefits returned and safety budgets rose. I walked the factory floor and people nodded as if greeting a new day. The community center we pledged opened with a ribbon cut and a small band that played simple songs. Victoria faced charges and the legal system began to ask questions that had been hidden for years. Daniel testified honestly and the truth stacked up like steady bricks. I stood on a simple stage at the center's reopening. An older woman from the sewing line leaned close and whispered, "We thought you were a fool to try." I smiled and felt the sound of a small steady joy. The crowd cheered, and it was not for me but for the town they could now trust. I thought of the gala night and Victoria's mocking laugh. It was a tiny echo now, far away and thin. In its place rose the roar of people who had something real to protect. I took a breath and said the words I had always wanted to say on a stage. "Thank you for believing in me." The applause rose like a tide and the story settled into something that felt like a life rebuilt.